1320 Info Radio, a Cumulus station.
My name is Jacob Larson, and this is a Common Sense Show. Last week, we answered the question of why conservatives are so angry. The bottom line is both liberals and conservatives are angry, and the reason behind it is that politics is an extension of what you believe, how you behave, and how you view the world. So it's really no surprise that these two ideologies would clash. And that's all I'm really going to say about last week's show. Okay, I have some quick housekeeping things. I wanted to touch on a topic that isn't the topic of today's show, but it's one that has been discussed. I had posted a rotten e-card pic on my Facebook wall that read, "A true friend will automatically hate someone just because you do." Now, it's a pretty vague statement and doesn't give much in the way of details, but it does touch on a source of conflict amongst friends that gives a definition of what a friend means and what it implies is true friendship. So I wanted to address this really quick. I posted this on my wall, and this is some of the responses I got along with a brief exchange I had on it. A woman by the name of Karen Reese, she said, "It's true. I question my loyalty as a friend often when I don't follow this, but hey, I know some really bitchy people." Shirley Demaline said, "It is so true. You got to love those loyal friends as long as the reason you hate someone is valid, of course." Ha ha. Greg Ewart said, "Actually, this statement is total BS. I have lost female friends because I wouldn't hate someone they didn't like or were mad at, even if that friend was my friend before they were. Anyway, a few days after the 'can you consider them a friend' speech, I see them together at the mall or church like it happened. Now they both hate me. At some point, I wouldn't hate one of them. Very confusing." My response to Greg online was, "So basically, Greg, you've admitted to your lack of understanding when it comes to loyalty and friendship. By not siding with your friend, you have sided with the other person. Get it? So by default, you picked a side, even though you were attempting not to. It all boils down to how you perceive the person who's asking. Either you value their friendship or you don't. In the future, back the friend you care the most about and kick the other two. The friend will appreciate that and be more inclined to do that for you." Marcus Clark said, "I absolutely, without exception, refuse to abide by this. It has not lost me any friends either." My response to Marcus was, "Marcus, if I was wronged by a mutual friend and you didn't back me, you'd lose me as a friend. Just saying. I've got no respect for that." Marcus' response was, "If you were wronged by a mutual friend, not just exception but in reality, I would back you in that dispute. However, just because you chose to hate or dislike a mutual friend would not result in me hating or disliking that person. Number one, I don't hate anyone. Number two, I make my own decisions who I like or dislike. I have friends like that now. If either brings up the other, my response is that it's not a topic of discussion. What is between you and her is between you and her. I'm not getting in the middle of it." And we move on to the next subject. My response to Marcus was, "Post implies that something was done to cause hate. So I'm assuming the offense warranted it. In that case, if my friend isn't going to stand with me against it, then they aren't a true friend, now are they? So if I'm understanding your position correctly, it would appear that you're describing a lukewarm approach to friendships. And if that's this, I'd say you aren't being a sincere friend. Now, having said that, if it's just an unjust hate being used as reference to how it reads, and is unwarranted, then as a true friend, I'd expect you to tell me and work to help repair and fix the perceived wrong, especially if you happen to care about both people involved. But in my opinion, sitting on the sidelines when you have a friend in need of counsel or support is never good." Greg made a statement on it years ago. An old guy said something that really stuck. "Choosing your friends is choosing your enemies, so choose wisely." And I would agree. I think it's good advice. Now, I know this can be a difficult thing at times, and it can be a challenging thing to navigate. But as a friend, you should be willing and able to give your friend sound judgment. If you find yourself in this type of situation with your friends, don't attempt to sit on the sideline. You won't be respected by either one if you do. Stand firm in what you believe and state your opinion. If that isolates the one and unites you with the other, so be it. Know the one you care about most deserves that respect, whether it's done in counsel or support. If you are your friends, if one of your friends is wrong, tell them they're wrong. If they've been used or abused poorly by the other, then voice that and stand with them against it. But don't attempt to sit on the sidelines, because make no mistake, you've chosen a side without providing either friend the sound judgment or support they deserve. Get it? So for Marcus and Greg, you are my friends, and I love you. But don't ever take sides with anyone against the family again. Ever. Everybody's smiling here. Another quick thing. Guys, never refer to your woman as your old lady. You can refer to her as your lady.
They're a biker.
You can refer to her as your lady, as in the Kenny Rogers song, Lady, like a term of endearment. But she should never be referred to as old lady. Using that term for your lady just makes you look like a jackass. And I can say that on air because that's a donkey.
Yep.
But the reality is, I've never understood why a guy were to use a negative term to describe their woman. Makes no sense to me. Not only is it rude and offensive to her, but by referring to her in that manner, you're actually telling the world how incredibly stupid you really are. So treat her with respect. Refer to her with respect. And if you don't, I personally hope she sends you packing. And I mean that in the nicest way possible.
Amen.
Okay, so the show's going to be a little bit different. We're actually going to be breaking it up into 2 parts. And I'll tell you why. The other thing is we won't be taking any calls today. We won't be giving out the number. Anybody calls in, we won't be accepting the call. We have a special guest on the show, a guy by the name of Corey. How do you say your last name, bro?
Kelto.
Kelto. Yeah, it's not phonetically correct or whatever. Okay, Corey is the guy that designed my website and maintains my website. He has a business called Inverted Design, where he creates and builds websites for a reasonable cost. So we've known each other for a while and gotten into numerous conversations. One of those conversations has been whether science and religion is compatible. So we won't be giving out the number today, and we won't be taking any calls. I realize it may upset some people, and for that I apologize. Not really. Feel free to take notes, and by all means be ready to call in on the next week's show. We'd definitely like to hear your view on today's subject. We are going to be having on next week's show, and Corey will be back. So it is going to be an interesting show next week. But today we're going to delve into this topic uninterrupted. Corey, my friend.
Yep.
Questions is posed. Is science and religion compatible?
Well,
What say you?
The biggest question there is according to who?
Can you get closer to the mic? Because according to who? That's
Yeah. According to who?
meaning what?
It comes down to the person that you're asking that question in the first place. And
I'm asking you.
You're asking me.
You're here. I pose the question. Is science and religion compatible?
Absolutely. In some religious context, not necessarily in all. I think a lot of that has to do with who we're asking.
Okay, friend, that is not the answer I'd expected from you, and frankly, we're supposed to be disagreeing right now. So let's just pretend your answer was no.
Okay.
And you tell you tell me why. Why do you, so that's fine. Why do you think religion and science is compatible?
Religion, along with science, have both been the roots of many of humanity's advancements, our reasons to look at the world around us and figure out why things work the way that they did. In many cases, things that we did not understand have been attributed to forces that we have chosen to name in different ways. In some cases, those became deities. In some cases, they became forces that we later describe with a mathematical equation. In many cases, they are the same thing, and unfortunately, in our contemporary world, we have a lot of instances where we have religious dogma actually beginning to stifle scientific progress as well as intellectual progress because of the fact that we are unwilling to find a common place where both things have purpose and can exist as, if nothing else, a reason to investigate and find out more.
So you think that basically religion in somehow, some way, or I should say the practice of it, stifles scientific study?
Not necessarily. I think more what I'm saying is that when religion becomes an ingrained property within how a society works, that to the point where it actually begins to allow or disallow asking certain questions, investigating certain things, or using the tools that we have to find out more, that's when we actually begin to stifle creativity within a civilization, which in the end leads eventually, normally, to its economic downfall and eventually its fall from grace as a civilization within the world.
Okay, but you don't consider religion to be, or I should say, you consider religion to be a negative societal constraint?
When the religion itself forces its practitioners to stop asking questions, sure. When it's something that enables them to find reasons to have wonder and find out more about the way that things work in the world around them, absolutely not.
See,
fuel innovation and creation.
Most believers would take the approach that it is the lack of religion or lack of faith, lack of belief, causes societies to fail.
In some cases, that is a point of view that may have some validity to it, depending on what actual societal actions you're talking about. If you're talking about a supposed lack of civilized activity according to
or morality, or morality, when
Yeah.
people
Well,
start
and
behaving
that
amoral,
once again is very much a gray area because of the fact
things
that
kind of go to the
morality is
wayside.
dictated by those who are preaching whatever that morality might be. You do have plenty of instances where, yes, people who one would consider to be uncivilized because of the fact that they have not been introduced to of philosophy potentially may do things that others would consider to be totally counterproductive for society, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the access to that religion makes them more civilized people inherently.
Okay, so having a belief, having faith, having a religion of sorts to follow isn't necessarily a bad thing in your opinion?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
It gives people reason to hope. It gives people reason to ask questions. It gives people reasons to want to find out more.
Okay, so what's your rub, man? I mean, so what's I don't understand. I'm confused here. So what's the stick? I mean, so you're saying that basically, I mean, religion and all that thing is great, but as long as it doesn't stifle science.
Absolutely.
And, okay, so and I think that's correct, but you think that right now science is being stifled by religion?
Absolutely. We have
How is that?
states all across this country that are not only forcing inclusion of principles like intelligent design, but also going out of their way to not teach things that we know based on empirical evidence, things that we know based on far more evidence than what is ever presented to the students themselves.
Forcing intelligent design to be taught. You think that's negative? That's a bad thing?
Absolutely.
Okay, but intelligent design has some validity in it.
How so?
What do you mean, how so?
99.99% of all things that have ever lived on this planet are dead. Because of the fact that, generally speaking, Earth has not been a particularly hospitable place to life itself. The vast majority of the universe itself is a place where all forms of life would die almost instantaneously via one horrible method or another. Life is very special. It is something that is absolutely, statistically speaking, very unlikely to be unique to this planet. It is something that most likely has to find a niche in different horrible places all throughout the cosmos.
Corey, what makes it special if there is no intelligent design?
Because of the fact that it is basically the culmination of all of the forces and all of the different sciences that we have that exist within the universe.
Who cares?
Biology is the big form of chemistry.
No, who
Chemistry
cares?
is the big form. We should. Because
Why?
It's where we came from.
Why?
And that is the most commonly asked question that ever relates to a religion, a deity, or
Friend,
anything else. Is where
if there is no intelligent design, if it was not designed, then what's it matter?
shouldn't that make us ask more questions as to how all of these supposedly random forces came to come together?
I'm not saying we can't ask the question. I'm not saying we can't study. I'm not saying that we shouldn't actually pursue science and try to develop some sort of, reason behind how things work and stuff like that. But if my point is this, if you take God out of the equation, if you remove him from the thought process behind why you're doing that study, then it makes the study pointless, have no value.
Only if the only thing that
No
you're
meaning.
searching for is proof of God.
No,
Yes,
absolutely not.
absolutely so.
Okay, without God, there is no reason to do anything.
Why? According
Why?
to who?
Because nothing matters. Absolutely nothing matters, bro.
So nothing matters if there is no God.
If there's no God, then I think that everybody on this planet, when they're born, should simply pursue their own personal goals, lives, and dreams. And they should do it according to what they want,
What if that
irregardless of
includes
anybody else.
investigation of how things work, including how we came to be and how the universe itself came to be?
When you die,
That's not pointless at that point.
s-
That is
it's all
expression of
pointless.
That person's belief
It's
and
pointless.
desire to have their free will. To
why
to
acquire
think.
knowledge? Why take the time to acquire knowledge if your life on the planet's only going to be X amount of time? Why live poor? Why
Unfortunately,
struggle?
what you're describing.
Why have any pain? Listen, if you come down with a disease, why not put a bullet in your head?
Unfortunately, what you're describing is more or less a place where God gets to exist as an ever-eroding pocket of ignorance. The little place where all
God
the
gets to
things
exist.
that
Say
we
that
don't
again. Say
understand
that again. God
get
gets to exist for what?
By saying that, you are more or less saying the okay, we don't understand this, so we'll just shock to God thing. As we
That's
find
not what
more
I'm
things
saying.
out, you are then more or less relegating God to being this place of just all the crap that we say that we don't understand.
No, I'm saying God is the reason why behind the study. God is the reason why you'd study. God is the reason why you'd pursue. And without it, then
But
it makes no
only
sense
for
to
the
do those
person Who is
things.
seeking God is the answer to the question.
Really quick here. Why did you get rid of your mic? Are you not talking on this conversation?
No, he was just really weak on the mic number one.
So what? You don't have a mic now?
Well, not for the moment until I can swing that over.
Can anybody even hear you right now?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get you a mic
All right,
because I'd
all
like
right.
to know your opinion
Okay.
too.
All right. Good. Here, I'm gonna turn this.
Hold on a minute. We're adjusting mics.
Keep on going. Keep on
Okay, keep on going. You know, he's going to get mics adjusted.
I understand what you're saying. My only
Do you understand what I'm saying? Because I mean, it sounds like you may not understand what I'm saying here.
you're pointing to an instance where the
Why
hopeful
would-
answer to the question is God. which
why
is
would the most
reason to
evil-
then seek the information?
Why would the most evil thing on the planet be something that we should be concerned about, or a negative thing if there is no God?
Why should the what?
Why would the most evil thing that you can think of or describe on the planet be something we should be concerned about or care about if there is no God?
Because of the fact that it has intrinsic complexity that comes from what it's made of fundamentally that would blow your mind when it comes to just the sheer amount of seeming organization that goes into the things that we chalk up as just all this stuff.
But whether or not the world keeps turning, bro, makes no difference once I'm not on this planet.
To you, absolutely.
Of course, to me. Well, who else would I care about if there was no God?
Man, if we didn't... No.
What?
According
Seriously,
to that line
why
of thought,
would I?
We would still be sitting, banging on stuff with sticks because of the fact that we never bothered to try anything
That's not
different
that's
in
not
order
true.
to advance
As
ourselves.
long as there's women on the planet, we're always going to want.
We are
houses to
13
live in. We're going to want lights to come on. We're going to want food in our cupboards. We're going to want cars to drive. That's just the bottom
And
line.
every single one of those things was more or less provided to you in one form or another by science.
And it was all created because of women to make them happy. That's what men do.
Interesting. Not entirely sure where you're going with that part, honestly. I understand what you're saying. I really think that a lot of it comes down to what is the hopeful answer that we go into investigating with on our minds. If we are going seeking unanswerable questions that lead us to a place where we just go, oh, well, must be God. We can devise experiments and look for things that we can find we cannot explain that are to such a degree that, sure, there is no answer other than, well, something, and we don't know what to call it. So we're just not going to call it something specific. Some people take that and then decide that that is a personification of their deity that's important. Some people don't. Some people leave it as an unanswered question. Some of your most phenomenally important scientists have been incredibly religious people. They are people who found their own desire to try to find answers about all of the rest of the wonderful things that God had supposedly done. They let that be a motivation for why they sought answers. It was actually.
And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that?
Nothing at all. That's the whole point. They wanted to find out more. God was, in one way or another, a potential motivation.
And because of that, a lot was discovered. Because of that pursuit, because of that reason for the pursuit, a lot was discovered.
Because of the fact that they were unwilling to take God did that as the answer why.
Okay, listen. Simply saying, listen, I'm not sitting here saying that I'm for the God did that answer. But what I'm saying is the purpose behind why you would seek the answer to begin with has no value, has no meaning at all if there is no God. Listen, man, if there is no God, you and me, our only purpose in life, only goal, okay, is to seek out money and women. And that is the only thing we need to do.
That's a very human and very geocentric
It's very
view
simplistic,
of
I
what
admit.
is in any way important.
But that's it.
I would much rather understand how a planet comes to be than to understand a better way to get some amount of money during my finite lifetime.
You
I
can
would much
you
rather
can
have knowledge of something much greater than myself.
money would allow you to do that faster.
Absolutely. The knowledge itself would
Right.
also allow me to understand greater things as well.
Okay, but
which
the
would
point is,
also
it
then
isn't just
require more money.
it isn't just about money, and it isn't just about women. What I'm saying is those are just metaphors for basically we're just going to take care of our needs. That's it.
I think when you allow yourself to be that important, then yes, you can actually limit the
Why would
value
I-
of
why
all
would
the
I allow-
information in the universe.
Why would I allow myself to be anything other if there was no God? It's illogical.
Because of the fact that you are simply a carbon-based life form living on a rock orbiting a generally
That has
generic
no
yellow
value, no
star
purpose, and
somewhere
nothing.
in a fairly standard galaxy.
Exactly. It's absolutely a minute point. Whether I do good or whether I do bad means nothing. Changes nothing. It's irrelevant.
I don't really understand how that has anything to do with what we're talking about.
It has everything to do with what we're talking about. You're talking about, you say, I mean, you basically made the statement that intelligent design shouldn't be allowed in schools.
To a certain degree, yes.
If God's not part of
empirical evidence
creation.
whatsoever to back it up in any
If
way,
God's
shape, or
not part of creation, you're taking God out of the equation. If you're not,
Not
if you're not,
necessarily. According to young Earth point of view, sure. No, the Earth is not 6,000 years old.
How do you
There
know?
are not, because of the fact that we have rocks that exist on this planet that are almost 5 billion years old.
What if our measurement's wrong?
We have measured them in so many different ways at this point.
What if they're
that
wrong?
It is virtually impossible.
How
that they
many
could be
times
wrong.
has science changed its position?
Quite a few, but
A
that is
lot.
because of the fact that they continued to become informed. Not
So
because
what
of the fact
if-
that they ever stopped
what if
and
right
said,
now,
"No,
the
we're
way
just
we
gonna give
test
this one up
rocks-
to God."
What if right now, the way we test rocks and carbon dating and stuff like that is the equivalent of us saying the Earth is flat?
Yes, and that is exactly why we now have 7 to 10 different forms of dating we use in conjunction with each other, because of the fact that one is not always guaranteed to be reliable.
Okay. So I mean,
So therefore, we can date rocks to
And-
almost 5 billion
and we
years old.
could still be wrong.
According to what?
According to the past
The evidence
track
that we
record
can't
of
see?
scientific study. I mean, how many times, man, have we come out with something that we thought this is it? Okay, this is undisputable fact, and then it goes down, and it's like next thing you know, oh, gee, we have quantum theory in there where anything on the frickin' planet can be just done anything, and it just happens out of, and we have no clue why.
That's
I mean, there's theories out there,
why we need to
literally.
continue asking questions.
There are
and
theories out
refining our
there,
information,
Corey,
not-
from a scientific perspective that literally break all scientific laws.
Yes. New things are found out based on attempting to repeat an experiment. When it does not comply with what the previous
Have you
results
looked
were,
at any-
That's when you have a reason to look
Have,
again.
have you looked at or read anything on quantum theory, quantum mechanics, stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you can't tell me. I mean, that stuff doesn't follow the rules.
Absolutely not, because it doesn't have to.
Right.
It doesn't exist as fundamental matter in the same way that the larger things that we look at do.
Right.
and that's why it's all interconnected.
So stuff can
Biology
change.
is
And the more we
macro
learn
scale of
about
chemistry.
the more we
Chemistry
learn about
is the
that.
macro scale of quantum physics. Quantum physics, in turn, leads to the larger objects that are governed by physics itself. When those things get so large that they begin to take on all possible mass that they can, they end up being compressed down to where they're very small and once again go back into the realm of quantum physics. And in the end, it's related to understanding the next larger portion of what's involved. So that is why your place in the universe actually is important, is because of the fact that in the end, it is the extension of you as biology, which is the extension of you as chemistry, which is the extension of you as fundamental particles, which are made up of properties that come to us from quantum physics.
Wait a minute. You're telling me I should care
Absolutely.
and I should live my life because I'm concerned about...
You are old enough that you should understand damn well from Carl
I
Sagan
should
that
care.
you are stardust. You came to be because of billions of years
I'm
of
concerned.
exploding stars in space.
Yeah, yippee-ki-yay. You're telling me I'm concerned. I should be concerned, and I should live my life. I should live a good life, and I should be a good person because, I'm part of stardust that's connected to the rest of the...
You're the one that keeps trying to inject the I'm going to be a good person because of the fact that this fuzzy old man deity with a beard is sitting in a chair up
Let's
there.
spaghetti
saying that
monster. I
should.
prefer that. I prefer the flying spaghetti
I
monster.
like that too.
I like that too. The flying spaghetti monster. They have some awesome pictures online.
Well, and that's the point. You are looking for confirmation of your God via some hopeful scientific principle.
No, I'm
Not
saying
all
that
scientists are looking to disprove God.
I'm looking for
based on
confirmation of science
continuing to
because
look.
of God.
So that's fine. That can be your motivation for why. There are plenty of scientists who have used that as a motivation for why.
Absolutely, because
They did
anything
not
other makes no
necessarily
sense.
say because of the fact that
I'm
I
not going to
figured
get
out-
excited in the morning when I wake up because I'm stardust, bro.
Isaac Newton did not go ask to be
Isaac Newton?
excommunicated because of the fact that he discovered the basic principles that related to gravity. He was willing to
Newton or Newton?
continue looking and find out more. Isaac Newton? Not familiar with this man? He's
Yeah, I
not,
thought you said
he's
Newton.
not the cookie guy.
Did you say Newton?
No.
I wasn't sure.
Isaac Newton was a devout Christian, very much so. Galileo, who later became excommunicated because of the fact that he got a fight with the Pope about whether or not his non-Earth-centered model was correct. Information had been published about 20 years before that actually provided more accurate orbits.
And I agree. I
all
think
kinds
that
of stuff.
should-
He got kicked out of the church until, I believe, it was 1996.
So that's your rub.
because of the fact that
That's
he
what chaps
refused
you.
to say that the Earth was the center of everything.
And that chaps you. That chaps you. They got excommunicated because he actually came up with a scientific, what he knew at the time as fact.
Yes,
And
because
that's
for a
an
very
issue.
long time, it was fairly firmly taught, believed, preached, injected into everybody humanity that they could that we were the only important thing, that we are the only creation, that we are the center of the universe and the only important thing, which in turn
We meaning
actually
the Earth.
leads a lot to your point of view of why the hell does it matter to me how something halfway across the universe works, because of the fact that it doesn't bring me money or get me into bed with someone.
I'm saying, listen, man. I mean, for me personally, take God out of the equation, okay? It makes no sense to do anything otherwise unless it's in my best interest. I mean,
It's
it
in
just,
your best interest in the first place because it's what
it
leads
just doesn't.
to you existing in the first place.
Yeah, but see, that's irrelevant. I mean, because before I was born, what took place for me to get here is irrelevant to me. If I only have 100 years on this planet, I'm going to make good of those 100 years, and what happens after I'm gone, I could care less.
But that's not taking into account or accepting the fact that the oxygen that you breathe during your lifetime that facilitates you being alive, the food that you eat, the calcium that makes up your bones, was birthed in stars partway across the universe from where we currently are. You are more connected to all of the rest of it than you allow yourself to see yourself, just because of the fact that you apparently like to
Okay,
confine
I'm not
yourself to
arguing
just
that we're not
here
connected.
in this tangible sense.
I'm not arguing that we're not connected. I'm simply saying, I mean, because I guess that's the confusion. You're making the argument that we should care and we should have an interest in the knowledge of these things because of how we're connected and because of the things that connects us. And I'm saying that if there is no God, then none of it matters. So what if I were to say, if there was no connectedness, Corey, if things are not connected like you describe, then why would it matter?
Because of the fact that we are still inquisitive, because of the fact that we still deserve to know how we came to be and what our place within
Nobody's
the grand
saying you
scheme of
can't
things
do
are.
that. Nobody's saying you can't do that. My point
We
is
can't
this.
if we aren't willing to investigate.
We're
We
not-
can't
we're-
if we're not willing to ask questions.
Okay, so we're willing to investigate because it's something that brings us pleasure and it's something that we enjoy doing. But outside of that, if we're not connected in the way that you describe, then and our lives really are that insignificant, meaning that we only have X amount of time on the planet and we use it how we use it, and if we don't use it, we lose it. The bottom line is if we aren't connected, then none of it really matters, and how we live our life is irrelevant. We have to go to a break. We're going to come right back, and we'll be talking with Corey, and hopefully Theron's going to give us a little bit of insight too. See you soon, folks.
Would you say you're ordinary? To the person who is alive today because you donated blood, to the family whose child received a transfusion or recover from an accident, you're extraordinary. Ordinary people, extraordinary gifts. Visit laneblood.org to make an appointment. It's easy and it only takes a few minutes, but the good feeling lasts for a long, long time. Visit laneblood.org, brought to you by Lane Blood Center in association with EARS. laneblood.org.
There are things in life that increase the odds of people developing gambling problems.
The death of a loved one or a divorce.
An early big gambling win.
Other health problems such as being depressed or stressed out.
If someone you know is in trouble with gambling, know that there is confidential help available for gamblers and their families. For more information, contact the Emergence Gambling Treatment Program at 1-877-MY-LIMIT. That's 1-877-695-4648.
This message is brought to you by Lane County Health and Human Services and Emergence Gambling Treatment in association with EARS.
Lane County businesses can improve their bottom line and gain recognition through the Rethink Business program. Supported by local agencies and utilities, the Bring Rethink program helps businesses trim waste and find cost savings in energy, water, waste, and purchasing systems. Don't delay. Contact Bring Recycling today and talk with a Rethink business specialist, or go to bringrecycling.org.
This message is brought to you by Lane County Waste Management in association with Eugene area radio stations. EARS.
Hey, when you're unpacking those new electronics and other gifts this holiday season, remember that Styrofoam is now recyclable at St. Vincent de Paul. Do something nice for the environment. Avoid overfilling your garbage can and start the new year Styrofoam free. Residents can drop off small quantities for free at the St. Vincent de Paul stores on Division Street, Seneca, or Main Street in Springfield. And remember, St. Vincent de Paul is your place to recycle Styrofoam year-round.
This message is brought to you by Lane County Waste Management in association with EARS.
We are back. You're listening to Jacob Larson, Corey, and Theron here on the Common Sense Show, and we actually kind of carried the topic a little bit on while we were on our break. I mean, the bottom line is, okay, yeah, you're absolutely correct. I give humanity absolutely no credit at all as being a on this planet and it being just a star in the midst of a sea of stars. And those two rocks could smack together and be gone tomorrow. And if that's the case, Corey, then the only thing that I'm going to do is live my life the best I possibly can and is for me as much as I possibly want to while I'm here. Now, if I were to take your approach, your position, and say, you know what, we are all connected, and there is a rhyme and reason to all of it, and there is what you do, what you say, and how you operate does affect the people, and you're going to call that, a connectedness or something along those lines, you may be referring to what I think is similar, closer to God, which is the reason why you think it's good to do that. And it's also the reason why I think you do it. So you're referring to it just differently.
Fundamental ruling and a deity are not necessarily the same thing. Science has fought to find you your equation. That is called the unified field theory, the equation of everything that quite literally explains all of how physics works, all of how quantum theory works, how all of chemistry works in one beautifully expressed equation. That is, in all likelihood, what humanity may someday find that is the closest thing to explaining that grand overruling principle that guides and controls everything that there is. Because yes, most things that exist adhere to certain sets of rules, laws, and influencing factors that dictate how they get to exist and how they interact with other things in this universe.
So science is currently searching for God, is what you're saying?
Science is currently seeking the exact same understanding that religious scholars are, which is why things work the way that they do. Whatever that creator may be, whether that happens to just simply have been a super compressed universe itself that got down to the point where it was so massive that it could no longer contain itself, exploded, and we had the birth of our universe itself.
Right.
Or whether we're talking about giant hand comes in, touches a dark spot somewhere, you have a large explosion that leads to all of what is written in Genesis. The two really don't have to necessarily be things that can't both be ways of describing more or less the exact same story of what happened over the course of what we know about what has come to be to lead us to this exact point. That is not a question that all religions ask. Not all religions have creation stories. Not all religions have this burning question of how did the universe come to be that requires anything other than observational evidence to tell them that they are on something floating in space, surrounded by a hell of a lot of other things that look really similar to where they are too. It's something that only when we have that innate, God, somebody really has to tell us how we came to be so that we know what our reasoning is, are blind, looking for someone to tell us what to do, rather than seeking out information, that we lead to even a need for a creation myth or a story.
So once again, I mean, the bottom line is
diverges from evidence we have.
Your main issue against religion would be religious dogma.
Absolutely. Or
okay, but isn't scientific dogma just as bad?
Requiring metaphorical information to become empirical evidence. That is my big issue with any stated religious principle that diverges from science in any way, is that really it is choosing to overlook visible evidence provided to you in preference of dogma.
Okay, but once again, isn't scientific dogma just as bad?
Absolutely.
I mean, dogma
science is full of misconceptions.
Anybody who gets that fanatical about something, something's up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the reasons why those who attempt to disprove God via science, chances are will find more unanswerable questions than answers that they can find, just because of simply how science itself attempts to work. You don't go into it attempting to necessarily prove or disprove something. You go into it to experiment and see what the result of the experimentation actually results in, leading you to asking more questions about. It's something that, quite frankly, we're having a lot of this discussion because of the fact that there have been times in the past where we've had quite a few religiously motivated cultures who have gone through great intellectual periods where they had birthed incredible amounts of science. As soon as the dogma took over within their civilization and began to actually dictate choices about what the civilization did and held as important values, civilization tends to slide into decline fairly quickly, just because of the fact that they lose the ability to dream, they lose the ability to ask questions, they lose the ability to find new things and to continue advancing.
Okay, but that type of behavior is actually contrary to God.
Mm-hmm. Where are the world's best particle accelerators?
You got me, bro.
Okay, all over Europe.
Okay, what's your point?
The United States has slowly but surely invested itself into pushing science to arm's length because of the fact that we are currently ruled by a fair amount of religious dogma that dictates a lot of what we are allowed to scientifically go after or be motivated by, whether that be stem cell research, whether that be
stem cell research.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we don't want to kill babies, bro. I mean that's stem cell research.
I'm not here to define or redefine.
Okay, but what you're saying is that is basically promoted by
embryonic stem cell research and stem cell research are two different things. They are two completely different fields of study that, unfortunately, just based on what you just proved, that is dogma overriding science. Stem cells can be created from your urine to make neurons that they could put in your brain.
I absolutely agree.
As an adult, no babies involved.
Listen,
whatsoever.
I know that. Okay.
Then why, as soon as I say stem cells, do you go, I don't want to kill babies?
Because the argument...
No,
okay,
because you're ruled by dogma, not science.
Listen to me. The main objection when it came to stem cell research was how the legislation was written in regards to how it was pursued. And part of that legislation said that we could take stem cells from newborns, okay, and that was how we were going to get it. We don't want that. So that's what we're talking about.
Do you understand that newborns and young children possess
We are not against
cells
stem cell.
that-
Listen, Christians are not against stem cell research, man. Okay? We're not against the exploration of what it can do and all the benefits and stuff. We're simply saying that when it comes to the stem cell research, we don't think that you should be taking it from the babies.
That's perfectly fine. That's why two different fields of study exist. One that is embryonic stem cell research and one that is stem cell research. Unfortunately, the point is, if that is actually what the point of view that the group as a whole hold, they need to be more upfront about conditions and terms.
They have been.
They have not been.
They
because every
totally
single time
100%
it's brought
have
up,
been.
Nobody
It is
even
not a
gets to
secret.
finish saying stem cell research. It's nope, we're against that because we don't want to kill babies.
We are not against stem cell research. Where did you come? Listen, man, do you live your life in a bubble?
No, not in the least.
Okay, then how could you possibly think that
you just proved it?
I did not just
You
prove
just
it.
did.
I simply brought up what the argument was.
Right.
Okay, the argument with stem cell research is not the research
after the
itself.
initial reactionary response at the only
There.
two words
No,
that were expressed.
I'm sorry. I have to agree with him because there.
Okay, you can bite me, bro.
No, I mean because that's how it's been sold to us
Right.
as a whole.
Right.
You know that it is stems. In fact, that was the first thing that popped into my mind
exactly.
too, and because that's the way it's been sold to us in the media.
It has been sold with the concept of embryonic stem cell. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. That's the rub. As far as you take that out of legislation, then nobody's got a problem with it, man.
Okay.
Stem cell research can do wonders, amazing things. Okay, nanotechnology, another thing, beautiful, wonderful thing.
Do you understand that one of the reasons why we understand what we do about non-embryonic stem cell lines is because that was done on early embryonic stem cell lines? It's one of the things that led us to understanding that that was possible in the first place as a possible route.
Sure.
So why can't that child who, chances are, if it was birthed into a crappy situation, you would not be standing there with a bag full of food for it. Why can't that child be here for people who come after in the same way that we look at a person who's been in an accident and donates their organs, can become an asset to multiple people who live based on the research that was done for them? When we do scientific research, we pretty much have one woman to thank. She was a black woman who lived in the 20s named Henrietta Lacks. Cells that were taken from an ovarian cyst that she had were kept in a laboratory, and they found that they would keep infinitely dividing. They still do to this day. This one woman has now produced from cell cultures that were taken from her more than 2.5 tons worth of cells, and has led to virtually every time that you see a picture of a cell that has been genetically manipulated in some way or to show a marker or anything else, they are most often called HeLa cells, and they are taken from original cultures that came from this one woman.
Great.
The work that can be done using those things from a person or from a combination of cells that may or may not eventually lead to a living organism can have a far greater impact than just whether or not a certain group of people get to exert a philosophical judgment over whether or not that group of cells eventually manifests into a person.
Listen to me and try to hear my words as carefully as possible. If it is a viable birth, one that...
An embryo is not necessarily a viable organism.
Okay, well, you know what? We could argue that too. My point is, okay, if the embryo is sound, the mother is sound, then in my mind, there is absolutely no reason for anything other than that baby to grow and be born.
In most of those cases, yes. Many of the things that we take embryonic stem cells from are not necessarily, I mean, they don't grab a pregnant woman off the street and go grab her, pull her in, and be like, hey, yeah,
no,
we'll
but
stick
if
you and pull these
a
out.
pregnant woman comes in and says, gee, I want an abortion, and it's early on in the pregnancy, I don't think she has the right to simply offer that child that has nothing wrong with them up for stem cell research.
Is it up
and
to
I
the
don't
mother, though?
I don't think it's up to the
And
mother.
I don't necessarily agree with the fact that you believe that it's right to either make that choice for that person or to decide what impact that person's child could have.
You don't think
on the
it's
future
okay
if they
for
actually
society
come
to call
be.
BS on that?
No, not at all.
Really?
No.
Really? Well, then why is it okay for society to call BS on other things, other human behaviors?
Such as what?
Such as like, gee, I don't know, late weekend drink.
Why doesn't society do a better job of providing support structures if it's going to insist that every
we're
single
talking about
potential
basic things.
embryo that could come to pass will have to be alive?
We've got societal, imposes out there that says we can't smoke inside public spaces.
It's generally a health concern.
Yeah.
Because
what about the health of the baby? That's kind of a concern if it dies, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that train of thought of, gee, society shouldn't be able to tell that mother what to do.
So you're fine that the baby should have to come to be so that
that's
you
what
can
we
smoke
do
in front of it in the
That's
lobby?
part of working and living and growing in a society.
No, that's the circular problem here, man. You want the baby to be there, but
We're
then
in
you're
a
going to bitch
society.
about whether or not you can smoke when you're in the lobby with the baby sitting right there?
No.
That makes no sense.
No. The argument there, what I said was like, listen, I don't think the mother should be able to give the baby up for stem cell research.
And
if it's a viable basis.
Smoke around the baby and potentially
I'm not making that
smoke
argument.
into his lung.
I would agree with you. You're right. Society has the right to look
Then
at me with my
isn't it
say,
for
listen,
them to
you
say
can't
that
smoke around that child.
Indoors in the public place.
But in the same manner, society has the right to call BS on a mother's, behavior in terms of how she got pregnant and what she's going to do with that baby.
In some cases, that is true. In
No,
many
it's
cases,
true.
that is not true. Well, okay, here's the thing. Not all of the...
Listen, man.
Not
if
all of
somebody
the potential entities
if
of which
somebody
you're
can
speaking
argue at the basic,
come about in the ways that you are deciding that they come to be. If abortions were caused by rape and were caused by women dressing in provocative clothing, chances are statistically they would go up in the summer. They don't. If it mattered whether or not a woman had been promiscuous before being raped in the first place,
why are we talking
virgins
about abortion?
wouldn't be raped. If it is something that exists to, one, facilitate a medical need. Medical needs last longer than just 9 months worth of gestation of a potential organism within the mother in the case of a human.
Sure, agreed.
Lifetime. It's an entire lifetime that child has to go through. There's upbringing involved. There is plenty of
what is your
lack
point?
of support
that
you
comes
from the
advocating
rest of the
for
society
them
that would
donating
force
to
the
stem cell?
woman to have the child. If the society wants to force the woman to have the child, fine. Then provide support.
And they do.
They
and
do
we
not.
Have. Yeah, we do. We have to. How many single mothers are on welfare?
How much of our country is out of work because of the fact that we won't make fundamental changes that we know could result in people having plenty of jobs here?
Oh, God. I mean, you're bringing up totally other different subjects, man.
It's by money. In the end, we would have to look at paying out that much money of taxpayer money to go to support those people who are going against your religious principles. So therefore, you look down on them instantaneously and see them as no longer being members of your society, but are simply this group of people that are going against what you believe in the first place.
Listen, religion in and of itself, is simply a vehicle, if you will, to have that moral constraint, or to say, or to
For
use
some,
those guidelines.
yes.
I mean, that's what it's used for. I mean, that's what it is. To say that they have absolutely no say in how stem cell research is conducted, I think is kind of a short-sighted view.
You're more than welcome to not take part in it. That's fine. But why your personal religious principles or any group of people's religious principles should dictate whether or not our country's scientists are allowed to pursue a known, very, very, very valuable tool.
So what about cloning?
What about it? We do it all the time. Most
Same-
of the plants
same
that
type
you
of gig.
eat are cloned.
Same
Most
type
of
of
the
gig.
plants that are planted in your landscape around your home are cloned. Most of the... When you go buy a pretty orchid at
We're talking about
wherever
cloning
to take home to
humans,
your
though.
lady, that's a cloned
Humans,
organism.
though, we're talking about cloning humans. And so, if the religious aspect or sect speak out against that and say, "Hey, listen, we don't want you cloning humans," in your mind, they're blocking scientific research and study, and they should be allowed to do that.
Well, here's my question for you. What's your problem with that? Are you afraid that that's going to be an entity that is going to be born not through traditional methods, so according to you, will have never had the little angel float down and stick the soul in it?
Me personally,
Is
I'd
that
love
the
to clone
point?
myself.
I'd love it too.
Well, I mean, that's my question. Is it because of the fact that it comes about through a method that does not follow the standard model? Is that what's wrong with it?
In terms of what faith-based or believers think or believe, I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, they're looking at it from the standpoint. They're asking questions like, is cloning a human being? Does that mean they have a soul? Are they still created by God, or were they created by man? I mean, those are questions that...
Well, if we were supposedly created in, which, interestingly enough, is not usually referred to as his, but our image, which is kind of a fun thing from the Bible. And technically it is still a creation in the image of whatever. Because of the fact that if we are a direct reflection of that, and hopefully someday have the ability to become as supreme as that might be in some way if we finally figure everything out, then in the end, our works, our progress, our investigation, our questioning should be considered by most religious people as extensions of trying to get to know and find out more about that entity. Not to stop us with a brick wall that says, stop asking questions because of the fact that we're just going to chalk that one up to the big guy.
I don't personally have a problem with cloning. I mean, I think that you're using the material that is the same material that's used to create.
Okay, you don't.
Okay,
but
what if it was created?
Are you concerned about whether that clone has a soul or not?
No, I think it does.
You think
it do?
Absolutely.
Just based on pure process of it being born.
Based on the fact that, listen, if you're going to use a material that it takes to create a human, and you're going to go through the same process that it takes to create a human, whether it's in a lab or whatever, it's going to have a soul.
Okay. Well, here's the next part. What if the clone was created from the sperm that was going to actually be the one that finally got through the egg cell that created your next potential child? What if your clone was made from that? Would you actually view the loss of that potential organism in the same way that you view the loss of a fetus that is aborted, lost, or otherwise not brought to term?
No, because, once again, you're using material, something that would have been created anyway.
But potential is potential.
You mean if it was lost?
Oh.
Yeah. Well,
do you view those two things in the same way? Do you value them in the same way?
I think that they are the same. I think that they are the same. Listen, people try to have babies all the time, if for whatever reason things don't work out properly. So once again, whether it's through natural causes to create a child or whether it's through a lab, I still think God has control over whether or not either one takes place.
What about in vitro? That's when you begin to step into man requiring influence.
Man is using tools that God gave him to create that.
No. Man is using tools that man invented for himself in order to answer and find out questions that he did not have answers to.
Nothing can be invented
to facilitate doing something.
Had it not already been provided.
I don't know, man.
Yeah. See, the thing is, okay, if it's not about whether or not it's available, it's already available. We just haven't discovered how to do it yet. Kind of like fire. Fire always existed before man found it. Okay, fire was just something that was a tool that God provided. We just hadn't discovered it. Then when we discovered it, we started using it and we started manipulating it and started doing different things with it. And that's all anything science is. When science creates or comes up with something new, it's not really new. It's always been there. We just found it because God created science. You see? That's how it works.
I understand what you're attempting to say.
I didn't attempt to say anything. I said that.
What we're talking about in the first place.
I did say that, right?
So,
yeah.
I didn't attempt to say it.
And I think it's a very good point.
No,
very
I can completely. Okay.
If
the
wasn't
universe
possible,
was created by
if God didn't make it possible, let me finish my thing. Okay.
The rules and things that adhere to the universe itself would then be directly related to the creation thereof.
Cloning wouldn't happen if God didn't have the tools available that man discovered.
I disagree with that because that is at that point.
We don't have the opportunity as
that's
humans.
That's denying your whole free will thing.
No, it's
that's
not.
denying 2/3 of what
Oh,
actual contemporary Christians believe about where their own actions come into play with the world around them. They, unfortunately, I mean, once again, if you want to give humanity zero credit, fine.
Okay.
Honestly, I think it's a fairly pointless existence if
there are
really
hammers?
in the end you exist with pre-answered questions that are just God.
There are hammers and there are screwdrivers, Corey.
God.
There are hammers and there are screwdrivers, okay? They're both made readily available to me.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I picked up a screwdriver and used it as a hammer.
Yeah.
Okay?
But they don't call that one that's a little...
There's my free will.
They don't call the one that's a little plus shape a Jesus screwdriver, do they? They call it a Phillips because of the fact that its chances are named after man.
I don't have to use the tools that are given to me or made available to me in the method and manner in which they're intended.
No, because you can bang on it and pray for as long as you want, and maybe the rock will fall
That's
down
my free
and get
will.
out of your
I mean,
way
you want to
in
bring
the
up free will, there it is, man.
So, unfortunately, I think if...
We have 4 minutes left of this show.
We have 4 minutes left.
You got to be kidding me.
Well, okay.
The fastest hour in the history of hours.
Okay. Rise and fall of civilizations as they relate to science itself, it's a very important factor. It's something that we can see historically quite a few times throughout the course of history, that as we lost our ability to investigate, as we lost our reasons to question, as we lost our reasons to want to know why things work.
Because of religion?
The reason isn't important. That's the whole point. It's the fact that we choose to investigate. It's the fact that we choose to find out more. It's one of the reasons why if you ask an astrophysicist, what happened before the Big Bang? They'll just look at you and say it doesn't matter because of the fact that it did not exist in our universe. It was not empirically measurable. Nothing about it was something that you could actually relate into anything that would mean anything to you in any way, shape, or form.
So you're saying once people start studying science, they actually stop asking questions?
No. Because of the fact that they study science,
answers.
They begin to want to ask more questions
more
things.
You just said that once the Big Bang happens, if you ask a physicist what happened prior to that, he's going to say it doesn't matter.
That's a very reductionist point of view.
No, you just said that.
No, what I'm saying is that I attempt to answer that question for you because of the fact that there are not empirical tools to describe it in our universe because those events did not take place in our universe.
So if they can't describe it, they're simply not going to ask the question or study it.
There was not matter. We cannot explain to you.
How do you know that?
Because of the fact that we know, based on information that we have gathered, looked at.
What if all that existed and we simply haven't discovered how or why? Why can't we ask that question?
We do all the time. That's exactly what science point of view is.
But you just said that the physicists would say it wouldn't matter.
They make no attempt to explain it because of the fact that it's not describable in terms here. Much the same as the Bible does not say God was sitting in his lawn chair, hanging out, drinking a beer, and then he thought, hey, let there be light. They don't bother to describe what happened before either. Because of the fact that it doesn't matter. It didn't happen here.
Okay,
it didn't happen within our universe.
Unless God knew exactly what happened prior and is like, okay, this is what he said, let there be light, but there was more into his word.
And in some ways, physics may agree with you because of the fact that the Big Bang,
it's just our way to understand it,
of the universe, eventual slowdown and what goes into what's called the Big Crunch, we may believe be a cycle.
Exactly.
It
and
could
then it's
be something that
we have no idea
before.
how many times it's done that in the past or whether or not where we're on the cycle or if it's going to happen again. And
right,
the universe is like a giant rubber band, and we can't tell if we're stretched or we're gonna. That's all fine and dandy.
Yeah,
okay.
And the point is,
so you're saying that religious people don't ask those questions,
why those things occur, why those things happen, and
once they find religion. You're saying once they find religion, people stop asking those questions. They stop seeking out information. They
in
get
some cases, yes.
Okay, but people do the same thing with science.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, you had a lot of people believing that the Earth was flat, and they were happy to accept that.
And
they were like, "Yay, the Earth is flat."
That was mostly
and everybody says the Earth is
flat.
Church
told them.
So the Earth is flat.
That's what the church told them.
Yeah,
and they believed it.
What I'm saying is, it happens
despite
either
the fact
way.
That there was evidence, not to mention many other cultures.
People do the same thing with science. You have people that'll sit there, and once they came out with global warming, they're like, "Well, global warming, man-made global warming. It's caused by man."
The quote people that you're talking about is semi-Christian Europe.
No, I'm talking about people in the United States
because
today.
of the fact that
look how they
few
fought
other
global
people
warming, hook, line, and
world
sinker.
Ever believed that
man-made
the world was
global
flat.
warming.
The only people that believed that the world was flat were primarily European Christians.
Okay, so maybe the world is flat analogy is not a good analogy to use. But let's talk about global warming. It's the same damn thing.
You mean climate change?
No, global warming.
No,
man-made global warming
is far more accurate.
Man-made global warming. Man-made global warming. The liberal left jumped on that bandwagon, and we're all about it. Listen, we got to go. See you next week, folks. We're going to continue this. Check out our website, www.bycommonsense.com.
And you're listening to The Common Sense Show. We'll catch you next week.